Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Political Lens Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Taiwan, a history before the conflict. I've always been captivated by Taiwan, not just as a flashpoint in international politics, but as a place with a history that stretches back thousands of years. To truly understand why Taiwan matters today, you have to start at the very beginning with the island's indigenous people. Long before outsiders arrived, these communities thrived in Taiwan's mountains and along its coast, building societies in their own language, customs, and social structures. They hunted, fished, and farmed, creating an identity tied deeply to the land and the sea. Then came the Chinese settlers, mostly from the Fujian and the Guangdong provinces, who crossed the Taiwan Strait in a search for the opportunity for fleeing hardship or escaping conflict. They brought with them new farming techniques and language and traditions which emerged or sometimes clashed with indigenous cultures. It created a blend of influence that would define Taiwan's identity for centuries. The island was also becoming a place where multiple cultures intersected, each having lasting marks. The story also becomes even more complex in the early 17th century, when European powers arrived on the scene. The Dutch East India Company established a colony in the south in 1624, controlling trade and local populations. Meanwhile, the Spanish held smaller presences in the north for about 2 decades, creating a patchwork of colonial influence. These European powers introduced new forms of administration, commerce, and military organizations which shaped local society in profound ways. One of the most legendary figures to emerge from the spirit was Xing Qinggong, better known as Koxinga, a Ming loyalist who expelled the Dutch in 1662. His arrival solidified Chinese influence over the island and brought a sense of local leadership and resistance. Following Konging, Taiwan was officially incorporated into the Qing dynasty in 1683, becoming part of China in name and administration. Life under the king was mixed of stability and tension, as well as the government tried to managing migration and resources while much of the interior remained self-governed. Now, as Taiwan's identity during this time was already layered, combining indigenous traditions, Chinese customs, and memories of resistance and adaptation, these layers created a society distinct from the mainland, resilient but yet flexible in the face of external pressures. Then in the late 19th century, China faced defeat to the First Sino-Japanese War. The Treaty of Shimonoseki in 1895 forced the Qing dynasty to cede Taiwan to Japan, beginning 50 years of Japanese colonial rule. Japanese rule transformed Taiwan in ways the island had never experienced before, and the railroads were built, cities modernized, and the education reformed as industry developed under strict colonial oversight. The Japanese also imposed assimilation policies requiring the Taiwanese to adopt Japanese language, culture, and loyalty. Resistance persisted throughout these decades as local communities sought to preserve their heritage and identity. When World War II ended in 1945, Japan's defeat returned Taiwan to Chinese control under the Republic of China, led by the Kuomintang, but the transition was far from smooth as the island had been under Japanese rule for 50 years. The new ROC administration struggled to integrate Taiwan politically, culturally, and administratively, leading to the resentment and the tensions. Despite these challenges, the handover symbolically reconnected Taiwan to China, even as the island had developed a distinct identity over the decades of foreign influence. What fascinates me most about this is Taiwan's story is how its identity was shaped by these layers of history. Its indigenous roots, the Chinese settlement, and European colonization and Japanese modernization all contributed to its resilience and uniqueness. These historical layers are crucial to understanding Taiwan today, a society proud of its heritage and determined to maintain its autonomy. Every political decision and every discussion about reunification or independence carries the weight of centuries of survival and adaptation. Seeing Taiwan through this lens, it becomes clear that its story is not just about borders or governments. It is about people, culture, and the struggle to maintain identity in a world dominated by the great powers. Taiwan's history shows the resilience of its people and the complexity of the island itself. As I reflect on it, I realize that understanding this past is essential to understanding why Taiwan is at the center of global attention. Thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. After Japan took control of Taiwan in 1895, it struck me how quickly the island had to change under colonial rule. The Japanese implemented widespread modernization, building railways, roads, ports, and communication systems that connected cities and towns in ways that the island had never experienced. The education was reformed, with schools teaching Japanese language, culture, and loyalty to the empire, creating a generation of Taiwanese shaped by the colonial influence. Now, at the same time, Japanese governance was strict, leaving little room for the dissent or political freedom, and local resistance remained to the constant undercurrent. Despite these challenges, I saw how the Taiwanese people adapted and preserved. Farmers learned new agriculture methods and introduced by the Japanese, increasing productivity and trade, and the urban areas grew with the new business factories and opportunities that were emerging, but always under colonial oversight that prioritized Japan's interests as well. The resistance movements never fully disappeared, and the secret societies and uprisings and intellectual opposition continued to shape a sense of identity separate from the colonizers. By the end of World War II, Taiwan had been under Japanese rule for 50 years, and the island had developed infrastructure, industry, and social systems unlike any other period in its history. But the Japanese defeat in 1945 dramatically changed the political landscape, and Taiwan was handed over to the Republic of China, which had fought the Japanese and the mainland and expected to restore its sovereignty. For the people of Taiwan, this handover was both a return to Chinese control and the start of the newest set of challenges. The transition to the Republic of China rule was not smooth, and the tensions quickly became apparent. The Kuomintang administration struggled with the corruption, the insufficiency, and the cultural misunderstandings, frustrating local residents who had grown accustomed to the Japanese governance. Economic difficulties and the social unrest fueled resentment, planting the seeds for future conflicts between Taiwan's population and the central government. Even so, this period symbolically reconnected Taiwan to China, creating a framework for political and historical identities that continue to influence the island today. What fascinates me about this transition is how Taiwan's absorbed so many layers of the influence over time. Indigenous culture, Chinese migration, and European colonial presence, and the Japanese modernization all intersected to create a society that was uniquely Taiwanese. The layered identity made integration with the Republic of China both natural in some ways and extremely complicated in others. The people of the Taiwan had learned to survive and adapt and maintain a distinct sense of self under successive governments and foreign powers. As the Kuomintang consolidated control on the island, the shadows of the Chinese Civil War loomed large. On the mainland, the nationalists were losing ground to the Communist Party, and Taiwan became a safe haven for the retreating government. The military and political elites arrived with their families, bringing with them the vision of China as a unified nation under the Kuomintang. For the island's population, however, the influx brought both opportunity and tensions as local Taiwanese navigated life under a new administration while preserving their own identity. Even though the Taiwan was now officially under Chinese rule again, it had changed irreversibly from its pre-colonial past. The infrastructure, education systems, and the cultural influence introduced by Japan remained shaping the island's economy and its society for decades to come. At the same time, the resentment toward the Kuomintang administration and lingering pride in local identity created a complex dynamic. It was clear to me that the Taiwan's history of foreign influence and adaptation had prepared it to navigate the challenges But it also meant that the politics on the island would always be layered, consistent, excuse me, and deeply personal for its people. The post-war period also highlighted the strategic importance of Taiwan and the larger East Asian context. Japan's defeat and China's internal struggle drew global attention, particularly from the United States, which began seeing Taiwan as a potential ally against the spread of communism. Even at this early stage, Taiwan's fate has become entwined with international politics in ways that went beyond the island itself. Understanding these developments is also crucial to understanding why Taiwan would later become a focal point for U.S.-China relations, and why its history continues to resonate today. Thank you for watching another episode of the Political Lens Podcast. We'll see you in the next video.